Hi, thanks for tuning in my career story. So, I'm Tanya, and I'm one of the co founders of the Effective Altruism Chapter in the Philippines. I am also an independent monitoring and evaluation consultant in the development sector focused on social protection. So, all right, no one really grows up saying, "Oh, I want to be in monitoring evaluation." And perhaps you don't know about it or just have heard of it. So, in a gist, I conduct research and set up systems for government agencies and non government organizations to help them monitor and evaluate their programs so that they can be better at what they do. Although growing up, I also knew one thing. So, that's me at 10 years old, and I knew that I wanted to help people. But at that time, there was also no one going around saying, "Oh, here are the careers that you should take if you want to do good or want to do the most good." So, you folks are actually very lucky because you have these wonderful platforms and these fantastic career mentoring opportunities that you could take. And until now, I'm still benefiting from all of these. Yeah. So, how has been my journey so far? So, in the beginning, it was very vague. I basically chose my bachelor's degree, which was sociology, because I like science and social studies since primary school. And these were two subjects I knew I was good at. And I also enjoyed research and enjoyed making sense of the knowledge that I consumed. Um, but at the time, I wasn't really sure what this type of degree would take me. So it would have been really helpful if I asked more people about careers or taken up an internship. So yeah, that's one pointer. So I ended up also taking a management trainee program. I wanted to work in the government, but I wasn't also really sure about it. I had my hesitation. So this was like the next best thing for me. And I think it worked for me because I was able to take on different roles for a year, and also met different types of people. And it also confirmed with me that I still do like research, and I settled on a role which was strategic planning. Um, I found this to be very valuable because the internship that I didn't took before was something that went into this. So that was it. Um, Eventually, guess what? I also found myself in government finally. I was an executive assistant and I was reporting directly to a minister who at the time was handling the Department of Social Welfare and Development. I was assigned to help and assist her and the department in terms of policy making, planning, institutional development, which covered human resources. I also handled general administration that covered finance, admin, and audit. So this was a lot to handle at the same time. And my experience as a management trainee actually helped me to handle all of these accounts. I truly found my work and stint in the government to be really, really enriching because it exposed me to different types of programs and it harnessed my skills in data analysis and stakeholder management as well. So that was really cool and really valuable. But in 2016, I had to step off my role because of a change in administration. So, for someone who knew doing one thing for the last 5 years, I eventually had to find myself another career or role to take in. So, thankfully, I found 80,000 hours at work at the time and also learned about effective altruism. And it encouraged me to build my career capital while I was still unsure of what to do and take on different roles. And that was when consultancy came around. So, doing consultancy, I slowly built skills and knowledge about monitoring and evaluation. because of my previous jobs as well. So this was very exciting for me. Um, in the first few years, I was building dashboards and monitoring programs in climate change, infrastructure, and public health. So I was navigating through different priorities and interests. And typically, what you do is that you have to conduct interviews, you have to analyze data, do your research, navigate through bureaucracies and systems, understand how they are related, and also conduct workshops and have this process of zeroing in which measures matter the most for decision making. So that was really good. Most recently, I was also involved in projects experimenting on different ways how to collect data that were creative and also non-extractive. So for example, I had to monitor a livelihood project in a rural town in the Philippines, which would take me 12 hours to go to. Electricity only runs for 4 hours a day, and there was hardly no internet access. So how do you monitor? How do you collect data? So we had to be really creative with the forms, ensuring that they were easy to accomplish and the timing was right. And this was streamlined in ongoing monitoring systems in that city, in that town. Um, Next, I also had to monitor and find out how households were receiving assistance during the pandemic. And how do you do that when you get to that face to face? So, what we did was we administered surveys through a messenger chatbot over Facebook, which was highly accessible to these households. So, in my job, I really had to ensure that the data that we collect is valuable. And I had to make sure that this type of information goes to the decision makers, appreciate it, understand it, and assist them in making sure that they help people better. And at the same time, I'm particularly interested in making sure that these information would be valuable to the people who are affected by these programs and gain tangible benefits from it. And that's how I find value in my career. Yeah, so that's it. So as you can see, my career story, my journey hasn't been a straight path. I was clueless at the beginning, and I had to hop into different roles in different sectors as well. Um, but that's all right because I was able to build my skills and expertise along the way. So thank you for listening so far. That has been my career story. Good luck in your own journeys. And remember, ask people. People out there would surely want to help you out. Try it as much as you can. Don't be afraid to take on different roles. Have courage because that will also clarify what would be the best career path for you. And remember, it's a journey. Um, you will eventually get there. And if you end up wanting to explore other things, that is totally fine. Yeah. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening again. And if you have any questions or if this unfinished story um, resonates with you, because God knows I'm also still wayfinding my way to the best career. Yeah, drop me a line and I would be more than happy to listen to your budding career story. See you around.
Hi everyone, my name's Nikita and I'm the CEO and co-founder at Fortify Health. So Fortify Health is a micronutrient fortification initiative working in India to add essential micronutrients, so vitamin B12, folic acid and iron into wheat flour. We were supported by Charity Science in 2017 to set up, and so that kind of grew, that organisation kind of grew into charity entrepreneurship, which you may have heard of from this conference or elsewhere. So a little bit about my career. I think if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have never thought I would be where I am, especially not necessarily in a public health organisation after having a humanities degree. So just to go back a bit, I studied French and German at Oxford, and after this, I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work in the development sector. Most of my uni years were spent volunteering with societies that were more focused on humanitarian aid or with educational partnerships. So working with other universities like in Kampala, Uganda, to support projects out there. And so I hadn't really been that involved with effective altruism at university. It was only afterwards that I became really interested. And the year after I graduated, I ended up securing an internship at the Centre for Effective Altruism, where I worked a bit in outreach and a bit in research. And so there I was really excited to be working on a bit of research involving women's empowerment interventions. And at the time that seemed like something very new in the effective altruism sphere. And it really excited me that potentially it was branching out into things that I also emotionally was really invested in. And so from there, my career again was a bit more chance, I think, than planned. So after the internship, I applied to a bunch of jobs in the development sector in a bunch of different areas. And the one that I ended up choosing was a communications role at Malaria Consortium. And at this point, I had never heard of Malaria Consortium. It hadn't received its Give Well recommendation, but I did really enjoy the interview process, and it was also, I think it was the only job I got at the time. So I was like, yes, definitely want to accept this one and go ahead with it. So I started, I loved the job, I loved my team, and after 6 months or a year or so, I went from communications assistant to communications officer. And what I really liked about working in communications was you got an overall insight into the organisation and what each team does, what each project does. You essentially churned out all the important information or valuable information for donors, for online audiences. And so for me, it was probably one of the best learning experiences I've had in my professional life. And it was a year into working at Malaria Consortium when I had also kind of come across a Facebook post by a guy called Brendan Eapen, who was looking for a co-founder to start an effective new organisation. And this, at the time, sounded like my dream job, but that I was way too early in coming across this post. So I messaged him just to kind of get some advice and understand why he'd come to this decision to do this, how he'd done it, and what things I could do to become more skilled and be able to do that later in my life. And during that conversation, he encouraged me to apply. So I did, and then a few rounds of interviews and assessments later, he ended up asking me to be his co-founder. And I said yes, but not that quickly. We both had a couple of months of decision making, basically, where we spoke to a lot of people we cared about, people in the effective altruism community, and between ourselves to understand if we would be a good co-founder fit, if we were not too inexperienced, if we were the best placed people to do this, because we're not necessarily from those countries of origin where we would be working. And so after a lot of deliberation, we both decided to go ahead and start the organisation. So this became eventually Fortify Health. We started out in Boston in just as to kind of doing research, looking into the evidence, speaking with experts in fortification and nutrition to understand if this was like the intervention we were considering would be potentially needed, if there's a gap to fill, if we were the right ones to fill the gap. And 3 years later, we're now a team of 10 working in India, working on very different things to research and scoping calls. So now we're much more of an implementation organisation, and that's where most of our focus is. So the last 3 years have been a bit of a whirlwind in a good way. A lot of change. I did not expect to end up being here I'm definitely not a public health expert, but I do really like working with people, and I do like learning. And I think that's kind of what my job is. It's not really to be an expert in public health. It's not to remember every fact about every part of our job. But I think my job is to help experts on our team to flourish, to do their job well, to feel motivated, to have an impact. And I think that's where teamwork essentially comes in. And I think that's my favourite part of the job, is building the team culture and ensuring that we're driving as a team towards impact. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. If you have any questions about if I guess how a humanities degree could end up helping you in your career, or what steps to take in order to get to kind of new organisations, starting your own organisations, I'm really happy to help. I would say my piece of advice is to try and get some experience in an established organisation before starting your own. So rather than jumping from studies to entrepreneurship, try and get some experience in between. I think that's really valuable, and that's been probably the biggest help on my confidence, because confidence is something I have struggled with. And I think if I hadn't had that experience, I would have a lot more imposter syndrome than I already do. And so I always look back on my malaria consortium years with a lot of fondness and gratefulness. So yeah, that would be my final piece of advice, is just get some initial experience under your belt. And then I think once you feel confident in your ability to kind of execute basic things on a professional level, yeah, I think it's a great time to consider charity entrepreneurship. Okay, thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you guys at the EA Student Summit.